Welcome to another of the exponential race to the top sessions here from Santa Marta. This time we're going to focus on the hyperscaling of the next generation materials to shift from fossil. Low carbon and recycled materials such as green steel are now moving from pilot to scale. These solutions are of course essential to phase out fossil inputs in vehicles, but also in buildings and industry. But they do require sharp policy, rapid demand creation, and also infrastructure build out. So in this session, we will focus specifically on green steel. So our guests for this session will be on Zoom. We have Malin Balza. She's head of Group Sustainability of Stegra. Great to have you with us, Malin. And here in the studio next to me, we have Dr. Lutz Morgenstern, Federal Ministry for Economic Affairs and Climate Action, Germany. And from Stockholm, we have Johan Falk, a co-founder and head of Exponential Roadmap Initiative. All right, so let's start with you, Johan, please. Why is the material transformation so essential to the phase out of fossils?
Yes, the energy transition is really moving according to an exponential pathway. We see that, with solar, with wind, with batteries, electrical vehicles.
Not much.
That can take us pretty long way to the first halving of global emissions, but that's not sufficient. We also need to drive the material transformation, and we have to do that in parallel, because that represents at least the other halving of emissions. And steel is, of course, key because it represents 7 to 80% of the global greenhouse gas emissions. It's also essential from a security and competitiveness perspective. We have come reasonably far in terms of recycled steel, against 40%, but near zero steel is still on a very low level, less than 1%. So we are very early on this exponential S-curve. So whatever we need to do now is to move as quickly as possible towards what we call this positive tipping point. And that basically starts with having leading companies, suppliers collaborating with leading countries in the absolute front line, and to accelerate both supply and demand to take us to the next level.
Tell us also where we are on the exponential curve for low fossil and also recycled materials right now.
Yeah, as I mentioned on recycled, we are reasonably high, around 40%, 40 or 50%. But in near zero steel, we are far lower than 1% right now. So we are really early on the curve. So we do need to do our utmost to accelerate that particular curve.
Do we have Malin from Stegra with us any longer? She might have. There she is. Great. Thank you so much for joining us. So Malin, could you please tell us about Stegra's work?
So yes, we are up to the challenge to accelerating the input of near zero steel to the market. We are a Swedish-based company founded 5 years ago with the purpose to decarbonize hard-to-abate industries and starting with steel. And we are currently in the middle of the construction of our plant in the north of Sweden, where we will produce near zero steel at scale. And we start with steel because the steel industry today is a large user of fossil fuels, and as Johan also mentioned, stands for 7 to 8% of the total global CO2 emissions. And fossil fuels are traditionally used in the steelmaking process to generate heat, and for the chemical reaction where coke is used to remove the oxygen in the iron ore to get iron. And this leads to vast amount of CO2 being released into the atmosphere. But in the plant that we are building, we will use renewable electricity to produce hydrogen and then use the hydrogen instead of coke in the iron making process. And this will reduce the CO2 emissions significantly, resulting in a steel coil with 95% less emissions compared to traditionally produced steel coil. So near zero steel will be a very important enabler for the decarbonization of many other industries and value chains, for instance, the automotive industries and the construction industries. And with our near zero steel, we have qualified together with the Exponential Roadmap Initiative as a climate solutions company. And being a climate solutions company means that we have a really important role to play in the acceleration of the transition. Yeah, so that's a short intro of Stegra and what we plan to do and our ambition.
So thank you, Martin. So how are you planning to turn this into a competitive advantage?
Well, the thing is that we have seen a really great interest in the market, and the company was actually founded on the need for a near zero steel for instance, the automotive industry. When they have electrified the fleet, they need to look at two materials. So they came asking for green steel, and that's where we come from. And our customers are actually paying a green premium for this product. So we can see that that's a really good potential for us, together with the price on carbon that is also critical for our competitiveness. So to keep the ETS system in place, for instance, to make sure that polluters pay and a green steel company like ours can actually be competitive in that kind of arena.
So Molly, what would you say are the key enablers and blockers here? And what do you need from countries to accelerate this?
I mean, it's very essential that we maintain an ambitious climate agenda and uphold the system where the polluters pays through a fair carbon price. And this, I would say, is the most effective mechanisms for driving the climate transition and enabling development of the low carbon industries. And it creates a platform for us to operate, but it also creates a platform for our customers to ask for these products and to set bold climate targets. So to keep the ambition to have a system where the polluters pay, and to also ensure that we actually have a stable regulatory landscape, to think of this as really long-term initiatives and not having short-term changes that kind of hinders our possibility to invest in these kind of initiatives.
So turning to you now, Dr. Lutz, how far has Germany come on this curve?
Yeah, first of all, let me acknowledge the great spirit here at this conference. We are sitting here, you can not, maybe not feel it here, but you can really feel that people came here to make a difference, to send a clear signal that we are working on the transitioning away from fossil fuels, that we want to cooperate, change best experience and advance these steps. In the plenary, many representatives talked about the energy sector. There were some that talked about the industry sector, not that much, but I really appreciate that you put this on the agenda here in the talks, because it is an important sector responsible for 20% of the emissions. So we need to take measures in the industry sector as well. For Germany, the industry sector is at the heart of our economic policy, so it is very important for us that we transform together with the industry, that we find solutions to make them more competitive in the future. We are on track. And talking about specifically the steel sector, our major companies are already in the process of performing. What we need to do is to give them the signal and the certainty that we will not take another pathway, that we will continue the pathway that we have started. So creating lead market that send a clear signal for them and reliable pathways. And we do that in Germany. We have introduced measures. We do that in the European Union. You know that there is a very important legislative act in the making, the Industry Accelerator Act, that once adopted will strengthen the signal that there will be demand, that companies can trust and can produce green steel and will find sellers for green steel. And we are also working on that on the international level with the Climate Club initiative started 3 years ago that now has 50 countries as members. And there we also we exchange on lead market policies as one important tool, so that in the future probably there will not be one set of regulation for all countries. But if all countries exchange and try to harmonize, or at least make sure that it's in a way synchronized, we send an even stronger signal that this transformation is happening. So as Germany, we stay committed to this path, and it is also great to see that in other countries, companies are taking these steps.
Mm. So from your perspective, enablers and blockers here to make this transition speed up, what can you tell us? What enablers and blockers would you identify in this transition to grow this exponentially from a German perspective?
So there are often three big topics. One is the fear that those that are the pioneers face certain risk on the market. Carbon leakage, of course, is an important topic. So there, the EU has introduced measures. This has led to some repercussions internationally, and this is also one topic that we take up in the Climate Club to improve understanding, joint understanding of why our companies perceive carbon leakage as a risk, why we as governments have to take measures to react to that, and how we can collectively increase the ambition on the international level so as to diminishing this risk. So that is one of the bottlenecks, let's say, or one of the challenges that we have to deal with. The second one is on standards and definitions. If we have a world where everyone understands, has a different understanding of what green steel actually is, then it's really complicated for the companies to navigate in that landscape and to fulfill the criteria of all countries. So we need to get some kind of harmonization or interoperability for these standards and definitions. And then the third big topic when we talk to our countries on the international level is that many of them don't have the financial resources to support the industry in that transition. So we have to collectively find ways to support developing countries in this transition. In the Climate Club, we have started the global matchmaking platform to organize this support for developing countries. We also try to improve the measures and approaches to leverage private funds, because we will not be able to pay for this transformation in developing countries as governments, but with private capital and with giving some kind of certainty to private capital that these investments will actually pay off, we can help to make this transformation possible also in those countries that cannot manage this transition themselves.
Mm. And when you listened to Malin's presentation from Steger, what were your thoughts on what Steger is trying to achieve?
Yeah, I from listening, I really had the impression that we are walking in the same direction, and we of course know that Steger is one of the companies that is advancing in this transition, and we really appreciate that. And this is, I think, the future of transitioning away from fossil fuels to finding ways together, not adding red tape from the government side to the companies, but to observe, to exchange on the options that we have, how we can manage this transition together.
Thank you. So turning back now to the studio in Stockholm and to Johan Falk. What are your reflections after having listened to Malin and Dr. Lutz here?
Yeah, very interesting and just excellent as far as I see it. Stegra has a very important role as a sort of disruptor, starting, with net zero steel from the beginning. And I think to really be successful in exponential transformation, we both need the disruptive companies and we need transformative companies, because we also need to incentivize the existing big companies in steel to transform faster, so they don't block the transitions. We need both, basically, at least the front runners of the transformative companies. I also like to connect to the policies and the Climate Club, I think to really sharing the vital few policies which works among countries, because we also see from research that a lot of climate policies hasn't been efficient. And can we focus on less policies, but the vital few which basically provide strong results, and share that between countries? That will also simplify for companies, because it tends to be a quite fragmented landscape. So I think that's the second thing I like to highlight as well.
Thank you, Johan. I have an overarching question to all three of you, and I'd like to start with you, Malin. How fast and how exponential do you think we can go in this field of steel?
We have the solutions, and I think we need to dare to scale up, accelerate, and scaling up. And I think what you mentioned also, Lutz, about standardization, about what is green steel, and to have different layers to actually include both the disruptor, as you would like to call it, Johan, and also the incumbents, in actually making the transition a jump if you can, but also do it stepwise, and to ensure that those kind of standards for green steel are ambitious enough to drive the transition, but also wide enough to keep everyone on board. But yeah, we just need to get started and start doing.
Thank you. Just going to dwell a bit on stay with you for a bit, Malin. When it comes to investments, what are your thoughts? I mean, Stegrad was just granted a quite large investment from a large private investor in Sweden, and previously there's no secret that it's been a struggle for you for a while, as in many disruptive technologies. So what can you say about the investment landscape here when it comes to these technologies?
I think we've been supported from the start from really ambitious investors who've had the green agenda as their kind of leading star, and really believing in the transition, really believing that these companies are the ones who will be the winners going forward. And I think after our a little bit more challenging time, we now had a new decision, and it kind of shows the same signals. We keep the strong support that we've had, but we also have new investors on board that really take a stand for the business case and the long-term profitability of going with these new solutions that are super important for the green transition. So I think that it really shows that many of the investors are really looking into these solutions and are betting on those for their future profitability.
Thank you very much, Malin. I think the big news that came out was 2 weeks ago. I think many in the sustainability and climate world were really happy for you, and just this could be a turning point for many industries, green technologies that are that need investments. So, Dr. Lutz, turning to you here, how fast can we go, and how exponential? How fast and how exponential can we go when it comes to scaling this?
I'm often an optimist, so I think that once we prove that the solutions work, we will see the exponential growth. You asked me for reaction to Malin. I want to add one additional point.
Go ahead.
Because often there is a simplified narrative that the governments are putting a too higher burden on the industry, that the industry is suffering, and that we need to backtrack on our climate policies. And what I found particularly interesting was that Malin, she reminded us of the relevance and the importance of the emissions trading system of the European Union, that we give clear direction and regulatory framework to the companies, and that there are companies who have already invested, trusting that we will keep this system, and that we should not backtrack. So this simplified story that the private sector is too much burdened, that is really not true. No? There are companies who show that it is successful, I think this is also what makes me confident that we can, with companies that have already started this transition, that we can really be successful.
So would you say that we can really accelerate this loop, the action loop here, and if you would ask for any key actions that really needs to happen, what would those be?
I think it's really on these demand side policies that give the certainties, and at the moment, specifically for green steel, there is still a premium that you have to pay compared to conventional steel. So the public sector can increase the demand, and we will do this. We also need private companies to increase the demand. And there I can also see encouraging signals that, for example, for car makers, it is relevant. It can make a distinction if you can prove that the cars you produce are produced with green steel. And this is something that I think we will see from more and more sectors, that this demand is increasing, and we will then also support this. So that, yeah, you talked about exponential growth. Let's see, but I'm really optimistic.
Thank you very much, Dr. Lutz. And turning back to Malin here, what would be your answer to this question? How can we accelerate this loop here, and what is your key action ask here?
I mean, I think you put it nicely there, Lutz, to actually dare to keep the ambitious agenda, because there are many companies have already invested, and we don't want the agenda to be reduced, or the ambition to be reduced. We really believe that this will be the more profitable way of working. So we need it to be kept in the same direction, so we can take those long-term investments. So keep the price on carbon, keep the agenda high, make the rule of the game long-term. I think that's super important, to not waste already investment that had been made into these transition plans and companies.
Thank you, Malin. So we're almost concluding this session here, but I'd like to bring us back here to the plenary and to Santa Marta, because you are obviously partaking in the discussions here. And you have been taking part in many climate meetings. So what would you say distinguishes this meeting from other climate meetings? And maybe also a word about not just the energy aspects, but also the materials aspects, if and how they are addressed. If you could elaborate a bit.
Yeah, what distinguishes this conference from other meetings is the positive spirit. The co-hosts, the Colombia and the Netherlands, have somehow managed to create this atmosphere with pre-conferences. I'm here in Santa Marta since Friday. Academics, faith groups, indigenous groups, all working towards solution, business as well, multilateral development banks. They are all carrying back their input into this main conference. And the spirit that I feel here, that you can actually smell more or less, is there are no limitations. There is not the typical negotiation style of holding back and only giving concessions when the other side is ready to give concessions. But here it's really a focus on solutions. So I'm looking forward to the breakout group where we'll get in more details after the opening plenary. Our State Secretary Jochen Flassbart is here. He is a veteran of the climate negotiations. He has been a driving force behind the Paris Agreement. And also he, with experience in climate negotiations for 15 years, he has said that he feels this meeting really is different. We should not create the false expectations that we will come here out of this meeting with finished solutions. Yeah, this is the starting point of a longer process. But it's really a signal that many ambitious countries want to work together, want to enhance cooperation, and do not want to wait until everyone is ready.
Thank you very much, Dr. Lutz. And I must say, from our perspective as broadcasters, having been to many COPs, there is a very different energy, pardon the pun, at this conference. So I'd like to ask a final question to Johan Falk here. what would your main takeaways be from this session, and also your call to action?
I would say that compared to 10 years ago when we did the first exponential roadmap, at that point we had the solutions to take us to the first halving, but now we basically have the solutions to take us to 2 or even 3 halvings, which is amazing. We also have the playbook for exponential scaling, which we see in renewable energy and electrical vehicles. So we should actually implement that in all areas, including near zero steel. It's absolutely achievable. I do think the stability is so incredibly important that Dr. Lutz mentioned, and also Malin from Stegra. I mean, one of the competitive advantages of Europe has to be policy stability, so that has to be recognized. A clear policy playground is so incredibly important. I do think that Europe could set a positive target on the up curve. Europe has a carbon reduction target, but actually state, well, 35, we should be at 50% near zero steel. We should catch up with China and others. And we should drive the race and race together, both in Europe, but also with the leaders globally. I think that is achievable. So we also need the positive targets, which is building the jobs and the economy and security, driving that in the front line to be able to deliver on the climate targets. But a great panel, and big thanks.
Well, thank you very much indeed, Malin Baltzar, for joining us here in Santa Marta. And thank you for your strong work in this field. The world really needs more fossil fuel steel. So we're delighted that you're pushing so hard for this. And also a big thank you to Dr. Lutz. I know you need to go down and continue the deliberations at the plenary. And thank you, of course, Johan Falk, for making this possible here from Santa Marta. We have talked a lot about electrical transportation this morning. And for electrical transports, you need batteries, right? And you also need a lot of them for the vehicles. And one of the companies that emerged as the European alternative to the Asian battery manufacturers, that was, of course, the Northvolt, the Swedish company Northvolt. The company ultimately did not succeed, as we know, and there's been much speculation about the reasons for this. The co-founder and the former CEO of Northvolt, Peter Carlsson, he has now decided to tell his version of the story, what actually happened from his point of view, and also what companies and the European Union can learn from this going forward. So I recently met with Peter Carlsson and the co-author of his book, Marcus Lutherman, in our studio in Stockholm to talk about this upcoming book. And after this interview, we will also hear from Hina West, Managing Director, Climate Strategies, and also from Caroline Rocha, Executive Director, LA Klima. And we also have an interview recorded in the past days with Carlos Nobre, who is co-chair Science Panel for the Amazon. He's also one of the planetary guardians and part of the panel that has been set up here in Santa Marta. We have another exclusive interview with Marina Romanello, and she is Executive Director from the Lancet Countdown. And we have another one from Yihao Pan, Professor at the Hong Kong University of Science and Technology, and Jackie Liu, his colleague, Assistant Professor from the same university. And we have also spoken with Paola Yanguas-Para, who is Policy Advisor, IISD. And last but not least, we will be presenting right after this Nick Robbins, Senior Director of Finance and Private Sector, the World Resource Institute. So thank you again to this panel. And for those of you watching, please stay tuned and enjoy the recorded interviews. And then after them, we will be back live here from Santa Marta. Thank you.